I really wanted to find out who my father was, and for the case not to go how I was planning it, I really thought it was going to go different than
apartment building. And they did what they did in there, talked a little bit, had a good time party, and I guess had sex. I can't fully talk as my mom because I'm not my mom. I'm just telling you guys what she told me. It was just, and I honestly just believe it. It's just no doubt in my.
After they are done with Diddy, Jay-Z is up next to be exposed.
The second Rymir Satterthwaite was rushed into the hospital, everything just froze. Cameras cut off, headlines paused mid-sentence, and all that speculation, it took a sharp, dark turn. This wasn't just some extra drama in a celebrity beef. This was a 31-year-old man whose body looked like it finally gave out after years of fighting a battle that's followed him since he was a teen. And the timing? Way too suspicious. Right when the lawsuit against Jay-Z was heating up again, his legal team, one of the biggest in the game, scrambling to put out another fire, boom, Rymir ends up in a hospital bed, quiet and drained.
Weirdo. I don't give no what you got in your head, that neural link. You'll never outthink me. Ever.
Was it stress? A total breakdown after over a decade of fighting for his identity? Or is there something shady going down that we're not seeing yet? For those who've been locked in on this story, you know ER's fight was never about chasing fame or cash. It's always been about one thing, a name. One name that's been kept from him for years. From day one, Rymir stood by his claim that his mom, Wanda, had a short-lived relationship with none other than Sean Carter.
I got older and my mom just continued to say the same thing, and she never changed the name. She always was staying with the same name. I'm like, well, Mom, why? Like, as I got to 16, 17, I'm like, Mom, you've been saying this since I was a kid. So it's like, now my mom never.
Back in 1992, Wanda was just 16. And yeah, the math checks out. The documents back it up too. But instead of getting answers, Rymir's been hit with sealed files, legal roadblocks, and what his team keeps calling straight up fraudulent interference. And now he's in a hospital bed at the most critical point in his fight, right when he was pushing again to make Jay-Z take that DNA test. Did Rymir's body just give out, or was it something else? That's when things start getting real shady. A source close to Dr. Lily Coley, Rymir's legal guardian after his mom passed, says things turned weird right after they refiled the lawsuit in New Jersey. Creepy stuff. Unmarked cars hanging around, strangers loitering outside, and men straight up following them. Then came the late-night phone calls, the threatening kind you'd expect in some spy movie, not in a paternity case. Coley described it like a shadow fell over their lives. She and Rymir were both scared for their safety. One insider even claimed a former Roc Nation associate let it slip that Jay-Z was ready to do whatever it takes to shut this thing down for good.
Has done things and allegedly participated in a lot of things that the public would not be happy to know.
And just like that, Rymir collapses, rushed to the hospital. And the courtroom, dead silent for the first time in over 10 years. Now sure, you could say it's just paranoia. A few threats, a few mystery cars, that's not exactly solid proof. But here's the thing, rumors don't stay quiet for long. And what they're shouting now, that Jay-Z allegedly sent people to confront Rymir, to shake him up and pressure him to walk away from the case forever. This whole situation hasn't been handled through quiet talks or cash deals, it's been about fear. There's no official connection, no fingerprints, no names on record. But let's be real, intimidation doesn't need a receipt. Sometimes all it takes is someone knocking at your door with a low-key threat, whispering that it's best to let the past stay buried.
So at what age then did you start to question, who your parents could be?
Well, I wouldn't say I started to question it, but I said around like 7, maybe 6, and I think it started at 6. And my mom was just telling me that my father wasn't my father. But as a kid, I really didn't look too much into it
But why go through all this if there's really nothing to hide? That's the real question, isn't it? Why not just take the test? One quick cheek swab and boom, prove your side, clear your name, and move on like a boss. Instead, Jay-Z's legal team has spent years, and we mean years, arguing over one thing: jurisdiction, back and forth between Pennsylvania and New Jersey like a legal game of hot potato. And get this, at one point, his own lawyer told the court Jay-Z didn't own any property in New Jersey. Later, she had to admit she misspoke. But in Jersey law, giving false info in court, that's not just a tiny oops, it's a serious issue. And it's slip-ups like that that got people thinking Jay-Z might be scared of what a DNA test would actually show, especially when you look at the timeline. If Wanda was pregnant back then, she would have been underage when that alleged hookup happened. And here's where the whole thing gets even more heartbreaking.
As a kid, and I honestly didn't know what she was talking about. But, I did hear her, as I got older, 7, 8, 9, 10, and she continued with the same story. My mom wasn't crazy. She gave us everything. She would give if you said give your life up for your kids right now, it wouldn't take a second for her to give her life up. She was just a lovely person, like everyone who knew my mom.
Wanda, Rymir's mom, can't speak for herself anymore. She passed away back in 2019 after years of begging the courts to just listen. Her death left Rymir out here solo, still fighting, without the one person who truly had his back and was willing to risk it all to get the truth out there. There's still no clear explanation on what exactly caused Wanda's passing, but friends close to the family say her final months were filled with stress, fear, and exhaustion. She was scared her son would die never knowing who he really is. And the silence around her death, it's only made the whispers grow louder.
I never got anything, so why wouldn't I believe my mom? We could have been settled this, and it only takes a conversation and some words, I'm not a hateful guy. I don't hate anyone. I'm not after nobody. I'm not trying to see no one downfall, but this is just some things that just went through court, and they just expected me to just sit there and just take what they were saying. I can't do that, because.
Was it natural? Was it the weight of all that pressure? Or was it part of a long-term plan? The kind of move someone with major money and power could afford to make, especially when legacy is on the line. Now, 5 years later, rumors are circling that Wanda had been working on a memoir, something real, something personal, something she was going to publish herself. But that manuscript, it vanished. No one knows if it was finished, where it went, or if someone made sure it disappeared. What we do know is this: when Wanda died, the fight didn't die with her. It passed on. Rymir became the fire, carrying all that weight. And now, as he lies in that hospital bed, maybe dealing with more than just physical exhaustion, the flame is starting to flicker again. And Jay-Z still hasn't said a word about Rymir's sudden hospitalization. Not a word. No statement, no comment, just straight up silence.
I don't have no felonies. I'm not crazy or none of that. It's like, I just want the truth, and it's so hard to get it from the courts. And it seems like Jay-Z don't want to say anything. So, I don't want to see him go down for something that you could have just got taken care of. That's it.
And it's the same silence Jay-Z's kept even when questions started flying about those alleged threats. For a man who built his entire empire on words, on lyrics, speeches, business moves, the fact that he hasn't said one single word to the man claiming to be his son, that speaks loud. At this point, it's not just legal strategy, it's personal. According to court documents, Jay-Z has never written to Rymir. Not once. No denial, no letter, no attempt to even acknowledge the man's existence. Not even when his own lawyer got caught making false statements to block a DNA test the court had ordered. If this whole thing was fake, wouldn't it be easy to shut it down with facts? One test, one truth. But nah, that hasn't happened. Instead, we've got silence. And that silence, it hits different when there's power behind it. Because behind that silence is a legacy. Jay-Z isn't just an artist anymore. He's a billion-dollar brand, Beyonce's husband, a father, a business mogul. If even a piece of this story turned out to be true, that he fathered a child with a 16-year-old and used his influence to bury it, that would shake his entire empire to its core. He's already caught up in the mess with the Diddy allegations, cracks are showing, add a paternity scandal with possible criminal weight, that's not just about protecting his image anymore, it's about survival.
This morning, rap mogul Jay-Z is denying allegations he assaulted a 13-year-old girl alongside rapper Sean Diddy Combs. That civil lawsuit filed against Combs in October was amended Sunday to include Jay-Z. The accuser, identified only as Jane Doe, says she was assaulted by both.
And let's be clear, Wanda wasn't some random chasing clout. She wasn't out here throwing wild stories for attention. Her fight, it was real, and it came from a place of protecting her son. Wanda stood tall and swore under oath that she and Sean Carter had been involved. She named him as the father long before he reached the peak of global fame. And when the courts tried to drown her case in technicalities, jurisdiction tricks, age loopholes, she didn't fold. She kept pushing. When the system tried to silence her, she passed that fight on to Rymir, who kept going even after losing her. They battled through every appeal, every sealed file, every sketchy legal move meant to keep the truth just out of reach. And now, with Rymir lying in a hospital bed and Wanda's voice gone forever, one question still burns. Who's gonna stand up to Jay-Z now? But as we wait in the dark for updates on Rymir's condition, there's this cold, creeping deja vu, like we've seen this kind of silence before. And guess what? We have. Back in 2001, when the music world lost one of its brightest stars, Aaliyah, just 22, gone in a fiery crash that left behind more questions than answers.
Why the f would you need to sign a don't ask about a plane crash if it was accidental?
Yeah. Do you feel like...
Riddle me that. Riddle me that. Work with me here in this moment.
And I'm gonna ask you.
A plane crash should be accidental.
Should be.
They called it an accident, but let's not act like that explanation ever truly satisfied the whispers. The rumors didn't die with her. They've been floating around ever since. The rumors didn't fade. They grew, morphed, and got tangled into conspiracy threads so dark and detailed, they refused to disappear. What if Aaliyah's death wasn't just a tragedy, but something planned? For years, whispers have swirled about a quiet storm brewing behind the scenes of late 90s R&B royalty. Aaliyah, Dame Dash, and yeah, Jay-Z.
Why would any testimony about what happened leading up to it need to be covered under a non-disclosure agreement if there wasn't foul play?
Now, mind you, September 11th happened a week later. 9/11 happened a week later. Do you think that took away from it?
Once again.
Before her whirlwind romance with Dame Dash hit the spotlight, industry insiders claimed Jay-Z was already moving in. Word is he was trying hard to win her over. Some even say he was obsessed, that he saw something in her that he couldn't control. Aaliyah wasn't just talent. She was power, freedom, and a wild card he couldn't buy. And when Dame stepped in and locked down that relationship, according to old Rockefeller insiders, Jay didn't take it well. Not one bit. Jealousy, resentment. But this wasn't some high school crush gone sideways. This was a love triangle with money, power, and ego all on the line.
There are people who did short sales on their stocks right after that, made a lot of money, including Sean Carter. Now I'm going to ask you, why would non-disclosure agreements need to be signed for an accident?
Then came that crash. A private jet booked last minute, loaded too heavy, packed wrong. The pilot found to have toxic substances in his system and no proper license to fly that plane. But here's where it gets really disturbing. A young island local, Kingsley Russell, later came forward and claimed Aaliyah didn't even want to board that flight. She was visibly shaken, voiced her fears, and get this, was reportedly given a sedative, a pill, before being carried unconscious onto that plane. Let that sink in for a second. She might not have walked onto her own final flight. Now look, nobody's saying Jay-Z had a direct hand in that crash, but the eerie similarities, way too hard to ignore. Aaliyah was finally gaining control of her career, calling the shots, breaking away from the people who once tried to shape her, just like Rymir, facing down $1 billion machine and still refusing to back off. And what happened to both? Silenced. One lost to the sky, the other now in a hospital bed, barely holding on. after allegedly being pressured, stalked, and scared into silence. So what really happens to the people who get too close to the edge of this empire? We're not just talking shady contracts and bad business. The entertainment world's got corners, dark ones, with secrets buried deep, settlements kept quiet, and NDAs floating around like ghosts in the halls of power. But when it comes to Jay-Z, this ain't your average industry heavyweight. He didn't just survive the rap wars of the 90s, he ran them. He turned court cases into street cred, scandals into strategy. He flipped every headline in his favor and partnered up with everyone, from presidents to tech giants. So when someone like Rymir starts yanking on a thread that traces back to the very roots of Jay-Z's empire, when the name Aaliyah still lingers in the air with unanswered pain, it's not wild to believe the machine would move fast to protect everything. Now let's talk about Beyonce. If you think she's just watching from the sidelines, you're missing the bigger picture. According to legal insiders close to the case, there have been secret mediation efforts going on behind the scenes, not just from Jay-Z's legal crew, but from the whole Carter Knowles camp. They've allegedly been working to shut this down quietly before it ever hits the public court system. Delays, denials, discrediting moves, all in play. Beyonce's built her public brand on being a mother, a symbol of strength, empowerment, and justice. But behind closed doors, sources say she's been heavily involved, way more than people think, attending private legal briefings, signing off on key comms, and even allegedly pushing for aggressive media blowback once Rymir's lawsuit started making headlines. So the question now is, how far is this power couple willing to go to protect the legacy they've built? Because what's being exposed might not just shake Jay-Z, it could rattle everything they stand on. Now this is where things get even murkier. Just days before Rymir refiled his latest case, Jay-Z's name popped up in a different civil lawsuit, one that also included his longtime friend and fellow mogul, Sean Diddy Combs. The allegations? Disturbing. Tied to a 2000 after party, the same year Aaliyah tragically passed, the same inner circle of power. Could be coincidence. No, but the timing, too wild to ignore. When pressure starts closing in from multiple directions, the urgency to shut down the one person who could unravel the whole story gets real, fast. Let's not forget, Jay-Z's legal squad has done everything possible to keep records sealed, avoid testimony, and most of all, dodge that DNA test. And yet, public records clearly show his ties to multiple properties in New Jersey. Still, his lawyers argued he doesn't live there. Meanwhile, Pennsylvania courts had already dropped the case over age limits. So, they claim New Jersey wasn't an option either. It's been a legal back and forth that's dragged on for more than a decade, and every time Rymir got close to a real answer, another wall went up. But who's putting up these walls? And what are they so scared a simple DNA test might reveal? There's two types of power out here, the kind you earn and the kind you protect. Jay-Z's done both for years. But protecting that power, that's where the real game is played. That means controlling the story, controlling the courtroom, and controlling the challengers. If Rymir doesn't make it through this, or if he survives but decides to walk away, the paternity claim, gone. The lawsuit dies with him, and the whole story quietly slips back into the shadows like it never happened. But for over a decade, Rymir's legal battle has never been just about DNA. It's been about pulling the mask off a justice system that seems to twist and fold whenever billionaires walk in the door. His case files, full of strange moves, documents sealed with no real reason, motions thrown out over weak technicalities, and property records that don't add up but still get waved off like nothing. One of the biggest red flags came when Jay-Z's attorney straight up admitted to misspeaking in court about where Jay-Z actually lived. That mistake ended up blocking the case from going forward in New Jersey, and under state law, knowingly giving false info in court is fraud. But guess what? No punishment, no consequences, nothing. The moment passed. The case stalled. Again. Behind all those locked up records is what Rymir's team says is a deliberate effort to erase his voice before it even gets a chance to be fully heard. judges randomly stepping away mid-proceeding without saying why, court orders dropping out of nowhere, citing gag orders that don't even exist, and maybe the biggest red flag, crucial filings suddenly getting slapped with confidential labels out of nowhere. And what's being protected here? Not minors, not sensitive health info. What's really getting covered up looks more like a mess of procedural screw-ups, all tipping in Jay-Z's favor. Legal analysts who've gone through the case timeline have flagged multiple shady moments. Court deadlines pushed with no explanation, penalties dropped on Rymir's team without reason, and key evidence mysteriously vanishing into sealed court archives. It's like every road was built to hit a dead end, not by law, but by design. At this point, it's not just Rymir's personal fight. It's a straight-up warning to the public. Because if someone like Rymir, with sworn statements, solid documents, and over 10 years of nonstop pressure can get stonewalled like this, what chance does anybody have when they go up against someone from the celebrity elite? This whole situation is exposing the real cracks at the crossroads of wealth and justice. We're seeing it live. How having elite lawyers and behind-the-scenes connections can twist the very meaning of fairness. And maybe the most chilling part? This might not be a one-time thing. How many other voices have been silenced just like this? How many truths locked away under confidential labels and procedural loopholes just because they dared to speak up against the wrong name, but not for us? Not for the ones who still remember how the industry looked away from the questions surrounding Aaliyah, who still ask what really went down in the Bahamas, and who gave the final word that put her on that plane. Because whether it's whispered backstage or hidden in sealed court files, a pattern is starting to show. A pattern of people getting too close and then suddenly vanishing, one way or another. We've watched how the system moves when someone shakes it up. Survivors are ignored. Lawsuits vanish. Settlements come with silence. Every single time. But now, with the floodgates busting open thanks to the allegations surrounding Diddy, Jay-Z's name ain't off limits anymore. The shield's cracking. And Rymir, he might be the last person with the key to a truth Jay-Z's team has spent years trying to bury. As the scandals stack up around Jay-Z, one thing's clear. Truth doesn't stay buried forever. It creeps out, it waits, and then it explodes. But now, with Rymir fighting for his life and Aaliyah's ghost still casting a long shadow, will we ever get the full truth? Or will the powers at the top bury it once and for all? Let us know what you think in the comments. Is all of this just coincidence, or are the cracks finally showing in the Carter Kingdom? Smash that like button, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive, and drop your take below. We want to hear everything. Until next time, now stay curious, stay bold, and never forget, silence always leaves a trail.